Are you a high-performing parent, entrepreneur, or high achiever in pursuit of excellence? Welcome to The Nexus Podcast, a podcast custom-tailored for families like ours, driven, affluent, and eager to lead extraordinary lives. From rockstar stay-at-home moms to high-producing CEOs, we choose to model success for everyone we are surrounded by. We prioritize health over sickness, embrace a vitalistic lifestyle, and seek to tap into the limitless potential that God has bestowed upon us. I'm Dr. Daniel Kimbley, your host, and on this podcast, we'll uncover the secrets to living a fulfilling and abundant life, where you and your loved ones can thrive physically, mentally, and spiritually. Together, we'll forge a path to greatness and unleash your God-given capabilities. Get ready to say yes to a life of true prosperity and well-being. This is The Nexus Podcast. What is up, Nexus fam? It's your host, Dr. Daniel Kimbley, and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. And this week, I heard something at the beach when I was with my daughter, and I couldn't help but share it with you. Before I give you the story, though, I just want to preface what I'm about to share with you with this, and I think this is crucial. This is everything that I stand for. This is everything that I believe way back, even going into when I was a high schooler, probably before that, but I wasn't really consciously aware of it. And it's this idea that every single person has the same potential to be successful, to be healthy, to do the things that they love to do, to express a very specific God-given purpose on this earth. I believe that every single person, we have a thumbprint that is unique and different, and each of us have that. I truly believe that each of us have a higher calling and a higher purpose that is unique for each one of us. And if we make a certain set of decisions and set of movements in that direction, obviously life is going to be much more fulfilling, much more joyful, much more healthy. The list could go on and on. So I share that with you because as I was thinking about what I wanted to record this week, I heard this thing at the beach when I was with my daughter. I'll share that with you in just a second. And I couldn't help but think about this idea that each one of us has the potential to be successful, but we get so distracted in the world by things that actually don't bring us closer to our passion and purpose. So here's what I heard at the beach, and this is what I want to share with you, and I think this is so crucial. And when you hear me say this, some of you, it's probably going to be a little bit of a shot in the stomach. And the point of sharing it isn't to call you out or say that you're bad or say that you're wrong, but it's just to have you consider a different possibility for your life if you were to go all in on you and the purpose and the passion and the expression of life that is possible for each and every one of us on this planet. And that's my belief. If you disagree with me, you can just hit pause or stop now, unsubscribe, because you're not going to like what I have to say after that, leading up to this conversation. And so my daughter and I are playing at the beach, and Coco, she's getting a little bit more independent. So Heather was away. She was doing a cake decorating class. And Coco and I were just at the beach hanging out, and we were having a good time. She was digging holes, I was playing, we were catching some fish. We actually caught these little tiny minnows, which is cool. And I overheard this family that was sitting behind us. I don't know if they were here for spring break. I don't know if they lived here. It doesn't necessarily really matter, but I'm listening to their conversation as Coco's kind of off playing by herself. And I'm just sitting in the sun baking, and I'm enjoying this experience. And I hear this conversation in the background, and the conversation went like this. They were talking about this new movie called Roadhouse, which is a remake of a Patrick Swayze movie. I do not advise you to watch the new remake. It will ruin the old Roadhouse for you. Nonetheless, Jake Gyllenhaal and Conor McGregor are in this new movie Roadhouse. And so I'm listening to the conversation, and I just got done watching the movie Roadhouse with my wife, and neither here nor there about how good the movie was. I would not recommend it. It's super violent compared to the first one, but what I heard is as they start talking about the movie, one of the people is like, I love Jake Gyllenhaal. He's just such a great actor, and he does these crazy weird movies. And they started mentioning, and I agree 100%. And then I heard another person chime in, and they're like, I just love Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor is the absolute best. Huge Conor McGregor fan. And I started thinking about this idea of all the times, and I know when I was younger, I don't do this anymore. This is part of the reason that I don't watch any sports at all. But this idea that we root for people in their lives more than we root for our own selves or our family in our own lives. And I'm literally listening to this conversation. I hear it playing out I'm a huge fan of this person. But it's so rare in society to hear people say I'm a huge fan of myself. I believe in me so much. And people will go to the movies. They will spend 2 hours. They will pay money. They will pay money for food. They will pay money for a ticket. They will pay money for popcorn. They'll pay money for a drink. and invest in someone else and in someone else's dream, but they won't invest in themselves. People will pay for floor seats at a Lakers game, and they will pay for the beer and the hot dogs and all the stuff that's overpriced, but they won't invest in themselves to bring themselves closer to where they want to be in their lives. And when I heard this conversation, when I heard the words, I'm a huge McGregor fan, my initial thought inside of my body was like, why aren't you a huge U fan? Like, why couldn't you be more of a huge U fan? And this isn't in like a selfish or narcissistic way, but it is in a way, this idea that like, we have to focus on ourselves first. If we build ourselves as the best version of us that we could possibly be, which I would argue is one of the reasons that you're here on earth, is because God brought you here for a very specific high-level purpose. And when you tap into that, you will start to become more for yourself. So if you are a good steward of what you have in your own body, yes, I'm talking physically, in the way that you take care of yourself physically, the way that you eat, and the things that you put in your body, and the decisions you make for your body. But beyond that, like when we take care of our bodies physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, then that allows us to show up differently in our relationships with people. So for me, like a big one that I'm passionate about is marriage. And one of my friends is huge on marriage, because as we show up more for ourselves, if I become my number one fan and I am all in committed to me being what I believe God designed me to be and brought me on this planet to do, that only allows me to show up better and more strongly inside of my marriage. And when I show up more strongly inside of my marriage, I have a better relationship with my wife. I have a better connection with my daughter. I have a better connection with the people around me because I have a solid foundation of a relationship at home, but it started with me. It started with me tapping into the fact that I should be my number one fan. That I should, instead of rooting on, the guy or like the sports athlete, I don't even know who they are because I don't watch sports anymore. This is a part of the reason I don't watch sports, is because I'm not rooting on someone else's dream. I'm rooting on my own dream. And my own dream is to be there as a husband, as a spouse, and then be there as a father for my daughter so that she can understand what a guy should show up like for in her life. And again, this has nothing to do with like, some people are going to be like toxic masculinity, whatever. Like, this isn't about that. This is about showing my daughter a set of actions, how I show up for myself, how I root for myself, how I root for my marriage, how I root for her, and how I support her. And then that allows me to show up differently in every phase of the game of my life. Like the way I show up in my workouts, the way I show up in the things that I love to do, like surfing. And for you, like my encouragement and the conversation and the reality is like, how many of you are rooting on someone else's dream more than you're rooting on your own? And I see this play out so often, where like people will show up in our office and they're hurting and they're broken and they have mental health issues and they have all these things and they have every excuse in the world as to why they can't do it, and all those excuses in the world are dependent on someone else and not on themselves and what they really want. Because these people are like, if I had it my way, I would be here, but I can't because X, Y, Z. But these same people will go and they'll do a build out on their house, or they'll do they'll invest in going to a Lakers game or a Raiders game or a whatever game, and it's like, dude, cheer on yourself, cheer on your family. And when you show up differently inside of your life, like, how could you not become your number one fan? And when you become your number one fan, I truly believe that more of the things that you're looking for inside of your life will actually come, whether it's financially, whether it's in your physical body, whether it's spiritually, whether it's emotionally, whether it's relationally. Like, it doesn't matter what area of life. What I know is that it starts with the self. And the most simple example I could give you, this is so cliche to talk about, but it's like, when you're on an airplane, what's the first thing they tell you? They tell you when your oxygen mask comes down, you put yours on first before you help anybody else, because you're no good to anybody else if you're not able to function because you don't have oxygen. And the same is true, I think, with our passion and our purpose inside of life, is that if we aren't functioning at 100%, each of us is individually, how much more can we show up for somebody else? And my question for you before we end this episode is like, who are the most, seriously, like sit and think about this and just pause for a second. Who are the most important people in your life that you serve on a day-to-day basis? And I'm really not talking about, if you're a business owner, I'm not talking about your clients. I'm talking about who are the people that you have to show up for, or that you should be showing up for at 100% every single day. And are you really showing up at 100%? Because I know I can answer for me is there was a time in my life when I wasn't. that I was putting everything else, I was worshiping, I was idolizing everything else more so than I was myself. And when I put those other things first, I put drugs first, I put alcohol first, I put partying first, I put work first, and then that made my relationship suffer. And when I flipped the order and I realized that I need to be first, I have to take care of myself first, I have to invest into myself first, and when I found my passion and purpose, I noticed that my marriage changed, I noticed that the business and the way that I make money changed in a positive way. And this isn't about making money. Like, what it is about profiting from life experiences. It's living life full out. It's thriving. It's being at 100%, which ultimately, like I said, is like, I truly believe that God gave each of us the capacity to be at 100%, to be successful. And I see people show up so much in their lives screaming at the TV over sports, but they won't scream at themselves in the same way to motivate themselves to get the things done that they know they should get done. And again, this isn't a call out or a shot at anyone. It's just this idea that I heard on the beach is like, huge McGregor fan. That's great, but like, are you a huge you fan? And I can look at people and I can just look at their physical bodies and know, like, the way that you're cheering him on, if you took all that energy and cheered yourself on in the exact same way, your life could be radically different because you were designed to be at 100%. I shared this on a previous episode of the podcast. If God was willing to give it to one of us, He is willing to give it to all of us. And I would argue that He already has given it to all of us. He already has given it to all of us. It's within us, waiting to be expressed, and there's only a few ways that I know to actually express it. And I think one of the biggest ways is for you to start rooting for yourself in life. You be your number one fan. Not be the biggest McGregor fan, or not be the biggest Taylor Swift fan, but be the biggest me fan. So my friends, that's all I have for you this week on the podcast. I love you and I appreciate you, and I will come at you again next week. Peace.